fellow neurotics. This is Neuronymous here, and I'm very, very pleased to say that my wife is on the mend. She's doing better. This is great news. And on top of that, we're getting our TV today. This is awesome. I'm so excited. And even on top of that, there are like many tears to this day. I wake up and I find out that one of my best buds, Tony, and his longtime girlfriend, they've been together for over 10. I think they've been together longer than Amanda and I have been together, 10 years or so. They got married, and it wasn't in a secret. It was secret. I mean, I don't think anybody knew about it. It was on Facebook. He even said it was a secret, but it was this. It doesn't look like it was some simple courtroom ceremony, courtroom thing. It looked like an actual wedding ceremony. So I'll have to give him shit about not inviting me, but like I said, it was secret, and I totally get it. But so yeah, I'm really excited for them. And I plan on having them on the show. They're very, very interesting people. Interesting in the sense that they are uber vegans, and I want to know as much stuff about the vegan lifestyle as possible. I mean, more than what they've told me. He is obsessed with tea as well. So yeah, he I think at one point he wanted to start his own tea business, tea leaves and stuff. But yeah, so anyway, so that didn't end up coming to. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition or not, but like I said, they got married, and I just remember inviting him over, Tony, and he is. Like I said, super hardcore vegan. And I remember we cooked some Asian meal for him, and I was like, he was, it was almost like having a rabbi come over to find out whether it was the food was kosher, except it was a vegan. So basically, I tell him, I made the mistake of telling him that there was honey in it. And he was like, no, man, that's bee spit, man. And I'm like, bee spit? What? What are you talking about? Bees don't spit; they just fly around, And he's like, "No, man, it's bee spit." And I was like, "All right. I don't know what I'm going to tell my wife, but eventually, somehow we figured it out." But anyway, they got married. I'm super excited, and that brings us to my guest, Timothy Berry, and I will be talking to him in a little bit. He is going to be directing. Speaking of weddings, he's going to be directing Tony and Tina's wedding, and that's in February, and I'm really, really excited to introduce him. And he's done a lot of stuff, radio, done a lot of stuff, in Mankato and among other places, and really sweet guy. I remember Esther and Marcella, who I interviewed a few weeks ago, and Jennifer Bronick and I, we were going to do a show in Burnsville. It didn't end up panning out because, I had decent material, and people aren't going to pay $50 or $20 for decent material. They want the whole thing. So it didn't quite pan out, but there was no hard feelings. I really enjoyed my experience with Timothy, and I am very pleased as punched to have him here, and I will be introducing him in just a few moments, my fellow neurotics. So hang tight, and he'll be on in just a moment. Timothy Berry, how are we doing today?
Hal Sennell, I am pleased as punch to be here.
Good. Hey, yeah, I don't say that for anybody. So my wife is, as I'm saying, my wife is upstairs. She's guarding our beast, Jasper. He's a little Shih Tzu Bichon mix, but he is a rescue animal, and he thinks everybody's out to kill us. So we gotta keep him under guard. I have
it's not the size of the dog. The size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog.
Part of me is scared that I don't know what. I know his history was, he was in pretty bad shape, when we picked him out because he had a broken ACL or a torn ACL or something like that, and the family was, I don't know. But part of me is scared that they put him in dog fights or something like that. Like he was gonna because he, like I said, he wants to kill everybody. And I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine just a few moments ago. He goes, if we're gonna do a show next time, just have it at our place. That is one angry dog. Sorry, and you'll excuse my language. I say fuck sometimes.
That's all right. I would tell you, I admire people who rescue that. I love all animals. We're cat people because I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Somebody said that my wife and I, we're empty nesters now, and they said anytime you get tired or lonely, get yourself a dog because they'll get you up and tell you it's time for us to take a walk.
Yeah.
Time to go do that. But I kudos to you.
Thank
because
you.
I'm telling you that we are a simpatico in the fact that we went down to the pound. Or the Humane Society or whatever. I'm still pretty 20th century in my thinking, but we got a rescue cat on that. Is what I'm saying. I mean, and they were because there's a need for that, and and that's and all cats or all animals have their own personalities,
right?
And if they don't, I'm certainly willing to fill in the background story on all the animals that we have. So anyway, kudos to you, for that.
Well, we have a cat too, and we're. Oh God, she's horrible too. Yeah, well, she bites me every chance she gets. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong. I just keep getting animals that just don't. I don't know if they don't like me or they just edible or something. I have a sign on my face that says, "Eat me" or "Bite me," which is probably more likely the latter. But
well, it may all go back to that communicate, that verbal, that language kind of thing. That may lead to your sentence enhancers that you're talking about there. So.
Yeah. So So I mean, we. It's been fun doing this podcast, and I really enjoyed it. This is going to be, I think, our 24th episode.
Oh, fabulous!
So so I'm really pleased, and I'm glad. I never asked you. Do you want a beverage? Do you want a sparkling water?
No, I'm fine right now.
Okay.
If I do, I'll let you know.
All right,
on
cool.
that. It sounds like
so it's Tony and Tina's wedding.
Tony and Tina's wedding, and here in Mankato, I think this is the third version of that.
Yeah,
and,
Patrick Ryan was directing.
He's the one who has sort of planted the seed on that. And I told him, I said that. I said I think he started the franchise, and he has tried several times now to drive a stake through the heart of this, and it's I've said this time it's for real, but it's I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the artistic community here to come together. It is a unique show, in that it is interactive with the audience.
That's pretty cool.
But only as much as they want to be involved in it.
Right.
And it is every wedding and wedding reception that you have ever been to in your life, and every cringe-worthy moment of all of those weddings that you have ever seen.
By nature, weddings are pretty cringeworthy.
Absolutely.
Unless you've been to a Jewish wedding. Those are pretty...
Well, and I think that would be an interesting take on that. And the authors of the show, I think, sort of opened the door to freedom to do that. It has been mentioned, well, why don't they do a Tony and Tony's wedding?
That'd be it.
And I think that there's a certainly interest and avenue to do that.
Yeah,
but
total
yes, it's so it's every show. Well, this is the third version that we've done. and I say we, I was only involved in last year's production, but it's the third time it's been done here in Mankato, and they do it out at the Cato Ballroom,
Oh, wow.
which also lends itself to, part of, you could either build a set that looks like the Cato Ballroom, or
Right.
let's just go and do it out there,
do it.
which is
Yeah.
lends itself,
Right. Yeah, some
to doing that.
authenticity.
And those folks have just been fabulous.
Yeah.
And it's so it's a different bride and groom every year. But each show is different because the audience adds. Well, and I think you could probably say that about every show that you go to. That the audience is the audience.
Right.
But the audience adds that unique development or element to every production. So even though people say, "Well, I saw last year's show," I think that this year's bride and groom will be different, as were last year's bride and groom and the bride and groom before that.
Right,
So
sure.
I think you can go see every show of every production and see something new, because
Right.
every one of the characters has a little shtick that they do,
Right.
and how they interact with the audience, and it was just I've been involved with live entertainment for probably the better part of 50 years now.
Yeah, this isn't definitely not your first rodeo for sure.
No, but this is probably one of those that is in a category all by itself. I'd say that,
exciting.
because it's the script is more of an outline.
Yeah.
As far as the story arc goes,
Yeah.
because the actors are certainly encouraged to embellish their parts,
Sure.
not to go all professory on you, but they, the endless infinity loop is plot. Character development is nothing more than moving the plot ahead, and plot is really nothing more than character development.
Yeah.
And that's what Tony and Tina's is. They just give you these rather elaborate sketches of what the characters are, and we all know what the plot is of a wedding and a reception.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
to get in, get the folks hitched, and then get about having
Hopefully nobody gets
a sketchy meal, and the chicken dance or the dollar dance or whatever
or
they
the
decide to do.
habanagila.
Yeah, absolutely. On that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, I just Esther, but Pat Ryan, who I plan on eventually having on as a guest. He's in Mexico right now writing the screenplay. But both he and Esther have asked me to be like, I think Pat asked me to be the DJ, at one point. And I was like,
Good.
no. Because and then Esther a couple weeks ago asked, hey, do you want to be in the? And I was like, no, but I definitely want to interview Tim, because I'm sure Tim's got. Is it okay if I call you Tim?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
As long as it's not.
I've been called worse. Believe me.
That's usually the line I say when people call me ma'am at work, like at my job. I'll be like, I've been called way worse in the last 24 hours. You're fine. So, but no, like I was just like, I don't want to be, in the show, because I have really bad anxiety, and which is weird because I minored in theater, so. And I did pretty well. I directed a whole scene from a screenplay. I talked about this before in my show. I directed a whole scene from the screenplay I wrote back in '99, and it was a big hit. And so as much as I love theater and I've been part of it, it's just too much. It's just too much pressure, and and at the time when Pat asked me to do it, my wife and I were trying, doing the fertility treatments, and our focus is on having starting a family. So that's just, being a theater DJ just didn't play into the cards. And this time, Esther asked me, and at first I was like, maybe I could do it. And I was like, no, because I've done stand-up before, that. And,
right.
And the thing is, I love doing it when I'm on the stage, but just the anxiety leading up to it is just so much that it's almost crippling, And this podcast is, I forgot what I was telling you, is like, I've never been more confident behind, doing anything than when I'm behind this mic, and, I don't know technically I'm not talking to anybody. I'm just talking basically to a mic, but, people will listen to it, and I know that, and that gives me that confidence, to just say, speak my truth, basically, and that's what acting about is really, bringing the truth out of the character, and you're good.
Okay.
You're good. And with Tony and Tina's wedding, I think that probably, if I were to do a theater performance, that would probably be the best one for me because I like to joke around and do improv and, that kind of thing. But just, the timing is always off,
The creative process and the impact of technology on the creative process has always been of interest to me, and if for anybody who has not experienced that anxiety, people always ask me. They says, "Well, are you nervous before you go on?" And I've said, if I'm not nervous before I go on, then something's wrong.
Yep.
On that, and I have members of my family who have that. I'm not even going to say suffer from anxiety because that's because it is part of the deal, and they have. They've told me that they said, Tim, you don't know what until you're there, you don't know the weight of what that is. But where I'm going with that is that because my advice to them says, well, can you use that to push to make that a positive thing.
Right.
And they said they've tried all kinds of techniques and all that kinds of stuff, but they did well up to and including that.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, some of us self-medicate, and I would say that even on the low end, like with caffeine.
Oh, yeah.
Or alcohol, or whatever, that may be. I mean, so a lot of us, are dealing with that, but that whole creative process and anxiety and technology,
right?
Now that because you were saying now you've sort of found a comfort zone where you're able to take that, because that has always been in our quadrant of, well, I've got this idea.
Right.
Now, how do I get that idea? How do I share that with people? Because as a playwright, or as they say, well, here's what they used to say. You really haven't got a play. A play isn't a play until it has been performed. You've just got got a manuscript.
Right.
And I don't know if you're like I am. If folks could see me, I've got a little notebook here where I've got just little ideas will come to me, and I just jot things down. Well, how do you get that out to to some way? Well, you have found a way that I'm quite frankly a little envious of saying, well, here you've used the new the technologies to to at least formulate it and capture it in some way, and and put it out there. And quite frankly, in my opinion, it doesn't really, it's the same way with performing for an audience. You don't have any idea if it's connected with anybody, but at least at least it's there. And here at least you have captured it in some way, and you said this is the 24th effort. Well, tip of the hat to you there.
Thank you. That's all. I'm very pleased, and and that's the thing. It's. I just enjoy doing it. I will say this though. As passionate as I am about this, I've told my audience. very briefly, and I think most of the people that have been on the show know this. I've driven my wife fucking like mad with this because when you're passionate about something, it's like all you think, it's all you talk about. And my psychiatrist is like, "Are you manic right now?" And I'm just like, "No." Yeah. This is just something that I'm doing, and you know, and I try not to refer to it as my child because it offended, you know, it hurt my wife's feelings. But you know, when you're passionate about something, it's kind of like it's your pet. You know what I mean? It's like, and you want to make sure that it's well fed, and you want to keep putting keep it, you know, alive, and you know, and take care of it. You know, and this is, you know, and somebody said to me like, because I started this October 9th, so this is still pretty new, you know what I mean? And I you know, I'm just trying to get as much content out there as possible, and I just sometimes it's with other people. I interview like you, and sometimes I just do like solo episodes where I just kind of unzip myself and just let things out. And if people, you know, if people respond to it, awesome. If they don't, you know, there's always going to be another episode, you know?
Well, I like it when comedians talk about with other comedians about how that I like Jerry Seinfeld, and I liked that thing where he did that comedians in coffee, and then afterward, I thought his first series was much better than the second series, but then you know, then again, who am I? But recently, he's been a question he's been asking other comedians is, what does your family think about it? God. And I'm in full disclosure, I'm married as well. And my as a matter of fact, my wife and I just celebrated our 26th anniversary.
Beautiful.
And it wasn't until about 2 years ago, we were driving somewhere, that I finally that I said, you realize almost everything I say is a joke. And it was like a light bulb went off. I said, "What?" I says, "You know, it says I don't. When I say stuff, I'm not trying to be. Me. It's not aimed at you." And Seinfeld was on one of the talk shows just the other night, and he said he's been trying to explain to his wife of many years that that when when he got married, that the families, it's team comedy, that they're part there to help him hone the material for the and it rang, speaking of kind of feeling like you're in the corner by yourself. I felt like waking her up, although that would have been, speaking of waking the beast, I said listen to what he's saying. He says even Seinfeld's wife doesn't really understand that he's not saying stuff to her,
Right, exactly. And there was, I've talked about this too, but I mean, there some material when I was doing stand-up, I mean, it went pretty graphic with between, because it was about our, when you're doing comedy, a lot of comedy is, as I was talking about with Esther, comes from pain, and the whole, and the whole thing with, fertility treatments, trying to adopt. I mean, that was like very much a part of it, and trying to start a family. And some of it got pretty graphic, about, doctors, and fertility doctors and, and just trying to continually have a child the old-fashioned way, and it
takes a lot of the romance out of it.
It becomes a chore. It's like raking leaves or something like that. You're just like, I was like,
and not like raking leaves on your schedule. Right, get out there and rake those leaves now.
Exactly. And you're just like, God damn it, I have to do this again. Anyway, but so
you can. I've been down that road too. So I'm just. I know a little bit from what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I've had a couple people walk out, because of some of my content, and like, to me, that's a badge of honor.
Well,
for me.
Good. At least they were listening to you.
Exactly. I drew some sort of like reaction from them, but you've got you've been around for a long time. I mean, talk to me about that. I mean, where
I started off as I come from a family of teachers.
Okay.
And so I was going to go into the family business and being a school teacher.
Sure.
And somewhere along the line, I got in speech contests and stuff. They channeled me into radio speaking.
Oh, wow.
And so I landed a job at a relatively young age at a radio station, mainly just doing time and temperature kinds of stuff. But I found out pretty early on that while I had this forum to speak, I didn't. I was 15 years. I didn't have anything to say. So when I went to, so I got a degree in social studies, history, geography, government, economics,
Right.
that kinds of stuff. And so I would teach school for 9 months, and then 3 months I'd go work at a radio station.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
And kind of balance things out on that. And and then that was really through being a school teacher, where and coaching speech and debate is kind of how I fell into theater, and so as my father would say, being too lazy to work and too nervous to steal. It's kind of how things sort of worked in that regard. So. I followed broadcasting was so during the daytime I would give to the kids and then at nighttime I'd go work at a radio station where it was me and that was kind of a nice balance. And then while pursuing an advanced degree, I fell into the concert business. Okay. I was at Iowa State University, and I ended up as the marketing manager at their performing arts.
Oh shit, that's awesome.
Down there. Well, and then without going into a lot of things. So I was Iowa State had the only one of two commercial television stations that was owned by the state. It wasn't an educational TV station; it was a commercial TV station, which kind of intrigued me. So that's why I happened to pick there.
Okay.
And so anyway, I ended up working for their performing arts complex down there at a time that they were they being the state was going through this privatization mode. Right. And so they sold the TV station to a real commercial operation, and they sublet their performing arts area to this group out of New York. Now they didn't really move it. The only thing that really changed was instead of my paycheck coming from the central office, my paycheck started coming from Two Pin Plaza out of New York. But
that's kind of cool to have something come from New York.
Right,
Right.
I mean, for and not having to move,
right, exactly.
To do it.
It's legit.
But those folks, stepped it up a notch, and so I ended up doing stadium concerts. I got to do Paul McCartney and Rolling Stones and Farm Aid.
Are you serious?
Right. On that we did Billy Joel, Elton John, did U2, did Pink Floyd.
Oh, you just
did we did all of those. They really started so it was instead of me having to go to the mountain was kind of brought to me.
Nice.
And at the same time, I got to keep my television program that I was doing. I was sort of the Phil Donahue of Central Iowa.
Oh, were you?
Everything except the cross-dressing. Well, I still did the cross-dressing, just not on television.
Hey, haven't we all?
That's my standard joke there for that.
Hey, it's okay. Been there, done that.
And but they were an expansionist group called Ogden Allied, and they opened up. They had the Target Center, they had the Fargo Dome, they had the Anaheim Pond, they had Madison Square Garden. They had they had about 250 places worldwide, but they opened up. They got the Mankato Civic Center when it was being built. They had the contract for that, and so they were looking for a management team to to come. So that's how I ended up in Mankato. I was part of the original management team that came here for that.
Right.
So that's how I ended up in Mankato, Minnesota, as part of the original management team in 1995. So
wow.
So I was a teacher, broadcaster, a ne'er-do-well that ran away to join the circus, and the the winds of fate brought me here.
Wow.
So
that's quite a journey.
It was, I mean, and I left out a lot of the good parts, So
well, why would you do that, Tim? Come on, man. Just kidding. Well, and I, when we first met, I mean, Esther had kind of, really kind of glossed over, what where you've come from, where you've been, what you're doing, and then we had that show. We were gonna have that show, and I remember we didn't have a lot of time to do it, and I was like, I don't think this is gonna happen, and there was no ill will about it, because personally I was like, I don't know if I can be that funny in that short amount of time.
Yeah, had just taken, by we, I mean, and by then they had Ogden. Well, here, if we got time, how much time do we have?
Time is
here's one of my best stories about.
Episodes last for like an hour and a half.
About being part of. It was Ogden Allied. It was when I belonged, but the best part of, and they're both New York. Companies, okay. But they're best known for introducing popcorn into theaters.
Oh, no kidding!
Yeah, wow. Ogden was a concessionaire, and Allied was a maintenance group, okay. And so Ogden introduced popcorn into theaters, and Allied came in and swept them up.
Oh, okay.
So it was a match made in heaven. Nice. So and that's really how they made their money, as concessionaires and as janitorial services, custodial maintenance services, and they were in theaters and in entertainment venues worldwide. Well, then when theaters and universities and when big entertainment venues began cropping up, right. And places began saying, well, who wants to, who knows how to manage these? That was kind of a paradigm shift. Well, there really weren't companies around to do that. And so they said, well, we're already here. Let's try it. Yeah. And so it was relatively new. I would say in the late 70s, early 80s when that started. And you were talking about right place at the right time.
Right.
And so they started this entertainment branch, Ogden Entertainment, okay. Which was actually who I worked for at the time. Well, eventually they got into that, so they already had a foot in the door. So they got in there. Well, they were since they had so many places, they were ripe for a takeover. So they got bought by Aramark. I don't know if you know who Aramark is.
No,
huge in the industry. You will even see them around town. Aramark has all the concessions up at MSU. They're your towel dispensers.
Oh,
if you okay. They have the big white trucks with kind of the red writings on the side. They're Walmart to Ace Hardware.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they're just everywhere. So they bought Ogden Allied, and they kept the concessions and the maintenance part, which was the bread and butter. And so they had this little. It had this entertainment wing. They're going like, right. Well, what are we doing with this? And they just basically kicked that part to the curb.
Wow.
Now, they were making, usually from the business side of things, if you're making 8 to 10% profit, that's great. Well, they were making about a 40% profit on the entertainment wing. Wasn't good enough for them because it wasn't big enough. So they just kind of kicked it up. Well, the fellow who brought me into the business in Ames was the vice president for them. He was running Target Center at the time.
Okay. Wow.
He bought made an effort and basically bought the Midwest version of that, which was Omaha, Grand Forks. Oh, great. Well, the Pershing.
Pershing Auditorium.
Pershing Auditorium.
Sure.
Made a bid to buy all of the ones here, in the Midwest.
Right.
And formed it as Compass.
Okay.
And that included Mankato. So we reformed under Compass Entertainment. And then operated under that for about, I don't know, probably 5 years. And one day, Home Office got a letter from a very nice group of people from England that said, "Say, old chaps,
Hello,
we're operating over here also as Compass Entertainment, and we'd just like you to cease and desist because we've had the name longer than you have." So they rented up the flagpole. Oh my God, they were there first. So we had to. You never, as a marketing guy, which I am, you never really know how good of a job you've done as branding till you try to unbrand.
Oh yeah, like the WWF had to go to the WWE.
Yeah, on that.
Yeah.
So we rebranded as Venue Works. And so, in the meantime, here in Mankato, the city, because really what we do as venue managers isn't necessarily rocket science. I mean, and my current job now, I'm a consultant for them. I'm kind of the fix-it guy.
Okay.
Whenever there is an opening at the management level, somebody either retires or is wants to spend more time with the family, if you know what I mean by that kind of code,
Sure.
or if he gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar or something like. They send me in to keep the seat warm, and for anybody who's seen me, you certainly know that my backside is large enough to keep many a seat warm here. And until the management board, gives them a little bit of time to do the selection process, keep the place operating until they get the person in place in time. So I'm a permanent or a full-time interim director. So
Okay.
I go to places like Dodge City, Kansas, Grand Forks, North Dakota, Joliet, Illinois, Mackinac City, Michigan, all these, and I do other things. I was the interim director of Twin Rivers here for when Shannon left and before they got in their current director. I was in that position for a year. I was the interim development director at Loyola for a year, even though I'm not Catholic.
Right.
Which was was a mandate. But I said to them, I says, even though I'm not Catholic, you still need somebody to run your campaign until you get somebody in. So that's. So that's that at this stage of life. That's
You're like Mr. Fix-It.
You're
like the Michael Clayton of
I got a certain set of skills here that that I come in and I won't like to anyway. That's So that's why there's I get that's why sometimes people, where you been? You've been gone. I went down to Joliet. I thought I was going to be down there for 6 weeks. I was gone for 7 months, but there was because it was typical Chicago daily style politics down there, but we successfully landed got what it was. I mean, I didn't clean up the Illinois politics by any means, but we got our contract signed, we got our person in, and I got out of there without too many indictments. So on that, so because you never really know what kind of you never know what you're parachuting into.
Right. Yeah.
They're going to ask you to rake the forest floor, to keep That doesn't work, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know that.
So, and now you're back here, and now you're directing
Tony and Tina's wedding. One of the other, which I'm just thrilled to do, because like I said, it's here on the local thing. I'm also involved with social justice theater. That is Centenary Church here in town
Oh.
is a downtown church, and they have refocused their mission towards the homeless.
Okay.
And as well as other things. But one of the things so that's one of their missions. But one of the things that they have done is, in order to, they had an option, which was to leave downtown.
Right.
And to move to the outer growth areas,
Okay.
of either to East Mankato or Upper North, or out
Okay,
where
sure.
but they opted to stay in downtown and serve the downtown community. Well,
admirable.
much of I thought so, and much of downtown is an entertainment district.
Right.
On that,
A lot of pubs.
as well as and to embrace all of what that means, and some of that is the homeless, as well as the entertainment area. And so they have served the backpack program. They serve the indigent. They serve people with special needs.
That's awesome.
And they use have chosen to use theater as a way of addressing the LBGT
Q plus.
right. Communities, the immigrant communities,
That's fantastic.
and all of those who
Need
who
help.
may not have a voice or a lot,
Sure.
and they're not preachy about it. They take material shows that are, for example, we did Shrek
Oh, hey.
last year. Let Your Freak Flag Wave was one of the was the song that's out there that
Nice.
celebrates the uniqueness of all of us, and they don't charge.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
they do a free will offering on that, but they also do a high quality show.
Yeah.
And so I'm drawn to that as a participant, as a member of their of their board or whatever, and so that's where I've kind of chosen to put some of my theatrical efforts on that.
Right.
But also then this Tony and Tina's, I think, kind of falls into that same, because we've got Merely Players, we've got MSU, the work that for example, that you and Esther, there is quite an artist community, an artist colony in Mankato,
Right.
that I have long said is underserved, and
It's waiting to just come out and shine.
right, and I don't think there are enough. I don't think there are enough showcases that allow people the opportunity to show their versatility, and I think the downtown district does a nice job. I think that Curiosity used to host an open mic. The Hag certainly does a nice job.
Yep.
I think all of
Yep.
those.
That's right, I missed
The
that.
Loose Moose does.
They got good wings.
Yeah. Well, right. So I mean, there are those things. I think we have a vibrant music scene.
Yeah. Good
I
Nickel
think that
Dust.
right. And I just think that this is, and I don't think each one of those necessarily needs to operate with that silo mentality. I
Right.
think that it's. Just because this one happens to be based in a church doesn't necessarily mean, like I said, it's not a preachy
Right.
kind of thing. I don't think people go to it, or you should not expect to be bushwhacked, and be thrown into a white van and taken to a rethinking camp. It's not that
No
at all.
reprogramming.
No reprogramming at all. It just that they're downtown, and that's
Right.
it's we are part of that arts community, and want to be thought of
Right.
as that, just like Twin Rivers is downtown
Yeah.
on that, and with all of those things. So and then with Tony and Tina's, it's I think an opera. Well, my basic line on theater is new faces are the lifeblood of any theatrical endeavor, and I was so impressed with the talent that was there last year, and I think we just are scratching the surface.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's always porn too. So.
Well, absolutely. Well, it's always nice to have that as a throwback.
Right. It's always good to have a backup plan. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yeah, well, I mean, and that's the beauty. I mean, of not just theater, but any, I mean, I was talking with this comedian Nathan Smethroot. He was a guest on my show, and we were talking about he's from like Minot. Minot.
Let's go North Dakota. I think it is North Dakota.
Yeah, and he was just saying it's places like that are kind of like smaller towns, or more rural areas where most of the people that are it brings the creativity out there because there just isn't a lot of stuff to do. So it's like you're kind of bouncing around walls with new ideas, and then you need to get it out somewhere. And that's why you see all these famous people. That you look at people like say like Tom Cruise or just any celebrity you think of. Most of them have come. Some of them have come from LA, some come from like the Coppola family, I guess, but a lot of them come from small towns, like Mankato, because and I can't say that there's not a lot of stuff going on in Mankato because we obviously just said that there is now, but a small town, it you have all these ideas and you see all these famous people coming from small towns and making it big because they've got they just had this they've been biding their time trying to build up, just like building up reserves of, talent and stand-up comedy, music, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So,
sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's, but yeah, as far as, performing, yeah, I'm not that guy.
Well, and I don't think everybody needs to be a performer.
Yeah.
Because it's well, first off, I think there is an audience of one. I mean, what do you think of it?
Yeah.
I think that's what is your voice? I mean, are you, I mean, that's, not to go too philosophical on it. Finding, that, am I really, who am I trying to, when I write something, I'm trying to make my brother laugh. I have always idolized my older brother because he's the guy who I wanted to be. I'm the middle child, so I'm the neglected one.
I'm the only child, so
So I mean, who are so if are you writing for yourself?
Right.
I mean, if you are the only Pat, well, as long as we're talking about Pat Ryan, he got a show into the Fringe this last year, and he went out and there was only one person in the audience out there because you never but that's okay. Well, you got to do it, but as a writer or as a radio person. I mean that, and I will tell you, I was a better news person than I was a DJ. I was, I can read the heck out of news copy.
Right.
But a guy like Barry Wartell here in town on KTOE, I've seen him in opera. If you hear him on the radio, it sounds like he's got a room full of people there. But he's just talking to himself, Have we got this right? He'll say, or is it, and you, if you're out there, well, he's just, he's created this whole menagerie of people around. So I think, on that, creative stuff. Well, I tell you, Jerry Lewis is the guy who I've read. Yeah, lady. He is able to compartmentalize Jerry Lewis, the performer, with Jerry Lewis, the director, and Jerry Lewis, the writer.
Yeah.
And and be able to write critique notes to each one of those, and severe, and be able to take, why that guy, that guy's an idiot, that director's an idiot, and I tell you, from coming from radio and then getting over to television, for me it was impossible to be to exercise creative control on both sides of the camera.
Right.
So you start to get into television or film or whatever. You have to start trusting people.
Sure.
When I used to write things, little sitcoms and that kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes that I saw some of the big guys write was that writers hand over their scripts to known child molesters, because because they're just gonna, because they're just gonna butcher it,
Right,
I mean,
right.
so it's, who are you writing for, and who are
your audience.
who are you trying to please, and
Right.
and I think I think you got to write for yourself,
Right.
and say, well, I was happy with it. Even as a performer, I have it right now. I'm in a play. We're doing the stage version of It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And
wow.
I'm playing the role of Mr. Potter. And
Okay.
I got people are going like, oh, yeah. And I got to tell you, I am not happy with what I'm doing, and that's not an ego stroke for me.
Right.
That's just I'm kind of a lazy bum, and I haven't really quite given it the dedication to, I said, I know I could do better, but I'm doing
Right.
okay.
You're doing your thing, and you're going home, and you're
Yeah, but I'm saying I'm not, so I'm not, I know I could do better.
Yeah.
And I leave going like, okay, I'm going to go home and study, and then the next thing I know, I'm going like,
Yeah.
I'm back here again, So it's, but the back to you, which is really what this is all.
I love hearing about that. That's my favorite topic.
Yeah, I think I think it does start, internally, that whatever the creative effort is, I think you have to be happy with it, and then
Right.
because and then allow people to because I think that's the only way you can allow people to, either as a stand-up comedian or to
Right.
send it out and let people kind of chip away at it and critique it, because it does have to be kind of critiqued, and because then then you sort of let the defenses down and going like, well, all right, maybe I should have used which instead of that, or I hate criticism. I mean, of my own work. That's why I hate rewrites.
Right.
It was perfect the first time I
And
wrote
see,
it.
maybe it's the Jewish neuroses in me, because I crave criticism.
Oh, you do.
And maybe it's because my dad is so hypercritical of me. I don't, it's in the gene, I think. But no, I just for me, I drive my wife nuts. We had, for example, I had this podcast. I mean, it was just a solo effort. Didn't interview anybody, but there was this part that just I was because the easiest part is the recording part. The hardest part is the post production and editing and making sure everything sounds good. And I'm listening to myself, and my wife just hates it that I'm constantly listening to myself, because I'm looking for things that I could have that might have been, like you said, like that or which or whatever. But there was this moment in there where I'm talking, and all of a sudden there's this this breath in the middle of a sentence, and I'm just like, no, absolutely not. That cannot be in there. And so I think I don't know if it was in my 1 hour break on my day job, which I don't talk about, but well, I do, but I never say where it is. But I'm sure most of my listeners probably actually already know where I work. But anyway, I said to my wife, I said, I need I need to like, it's at 18 minutes and 2 seconds. Yeah. And she was like, stop, listen. She was like, I'm gonna have to put child protection, rule, on your phone, and and I was like, okay. But then like the moment I had the chance, I just sneaked onto the computer and I was like, okay, found it, edited it, and I was like, okay, thank God, because it's, for me, it's just like it is an obsession, because the thing is, when it's your, I'm not gonna say baby, when it's your pet, you want it to, when it's your passion, we'll just go with that. You want it to be as perfect as possible. And the thing is, sometimes you gotta, that old saying, if you love something, set it free. If it was meant to be, it'll come back. Yeah. And hopefully none of my shit will come back.
Yeah. Well, and for me, coming out of broadcasting, that's kind of what the being a professional is about. It's not hitting that super high peak. It's laying that groundwork where you're saying it will not go below this. This is the level where I will put it. But also, coming out of broadcasting, there's a certain amount of mass production that comes out of it, that that every day at 5 o'clock when that hits up, it's I'd be in the editing booth and they're saying, is it done, is it done, is it done? I says, how much time do you have? It says, it's got to be done now. Okay, it's done. Yeah. And then it's but I also knew that there were no jump edits, and that like you said, that there's no deep, I mean, it there's a certain standard where you have to do it, but you're working on it to get the best that you can done in the time frame that you have. And that's well, there's that phrase about, what do you like? I love deadlines. I love that whooshing sound they make when they go by. But so it's but I hear what you're saying, that it's, when you, and I think that's good. You're the one who ought to care. You ought to be your best and worst critic. As an actor, everybody's going, "Oh, you're doing great. You're doing fabulous." You get that one voice, except that one spot where you did that. But everything else, whoa, what? You didn't like what? My shoe was scuffed. It may just be one little minor thing. Well, you kind of turned your head kind of funny.
Yeah, and the thing is, I have this not application, but like. I guess it is an application on my computer, that Audacity, which is what I use, and the thing is, I've said this story a million times, and I might actually end up editing it, but I got this mic through, somebody bought it for me, and because I was talking about, I want to do a podcast, I don't know what to do, and somebody ended up getting it for me, and I was just like, now I got to put my money where my mouth is, and I just hit the ground running.
Hooray for you! Then.
I just was like, well, you know what? I have no excuses now. So I did my research. I was like, what is the best, recording, not equipment, but recording thing on my computer.
Application, app, maybe. Yeah,
we'll go with application. Yeah. And at first I was just like, I'm not going to edit anything. It's just going to be completely raw. I don't want any, edits. And then I was just like, my aunt says to me, a few weeks later, just actually pretty recently, she was like, you say you know a lot. And so I go, when in post-production, I'm like, I'm going to show her. And so like this last episode, like I try to, every time I said, I like edited it out. And I was like, I'll show her, But yeah, no, I mean, everything, it's a process, and and if you want it done right, some things you just got to do yourself.
Well, and I could not agree with you more. I think I'm fluid when I speak, but yet when I hear myself speak, I go, why would anybody listen to me more than 30 seconds?
Hey,
I'm surprised.
We're almost on an hour here, man.
Okay.
We're good. We're doing great.
Well, great.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, yeah, and that's the thing, like, well, now, it's always funny, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. Yeah. So you said you've done, concerts for like U2, McCartney, and did you get to meet them?
Actually, I get to see a lot of opening acts, and I get to see a lot of final encores. I rarely get to meet those people. I meet a lot of their business managers. I meet a lot of their front people. I see. Here's my standard line. I said, in show business, there's a reason why the word business is the longer word in the whole thing, and that was very helpful to me to see how that whole thing worked on that, and that's kind of what has propelled me on that. I wanted to meet James Taylor. I got a chance to do that. And John Prine, and
nice.
Most everybody else, they're pretty guarded on where they are. So I didn't really get I facilitated a lot of meet and greets, as they say on that, and most of the people are very, very nice. I sort of did this sort of dichotomy that the nicer the group appears to be, the more miserable they were. The more of their public persona that was mean, the nicer those people were. Like the WWF people who had they just
step into a Slim Jim.
They couldn't. I'm trying to think who the guy was. He was kind of the bald-headed guy who was always. He was kind of like the business manager of the whole thing. Mean Gene. Are you a WWF guy? Well, anyway, I went back and I was always, trying to get somebody pass or give somebody to sign some release or something like that. And this guy who was notoriously on air is just being the guy who would like chase you out to the bus and
That's me.
He couldn't have been more gracious. And yet the Disney people are the most uptight, wrapped up thing. Stay away from the mouse. Don't But I mean, they.
For the record, Disney
if they're I'm sorry. Angry. No, they're good. Tim Berry is an alias. Do not come at you. So I mean that, and that's just a personal opinion of which I'm protected by the First Amendment right to have my opinion.
Absolutely.
So.
Amen.
But no, I really I was. Disabused of that idea that it was going to be an opportunity to hang out in the green room with a lot of the acts. That goes out there pretty quickly. They don't have anything to do with a chubby marketing director. Beat it, buddy. That's it.
I've had two opportunities to go back to get behind the curtain. And one of them and this is obviously. This is when I was a little kid, so I had nothing to do with what I'm doing now. But you know who Mandy Patinkin is? Right?
Oh yeah. Oh fabulous, yeah.
So I love Mandy Patinkin. I don't care if people think he's a douchebag or not. I mean, he was. I went back out. He gets out of that reputation, but somehow or another, I don't remember. My folks and I got backstage, and all of a sudden, he comes out and I'm like, oh my God, there's Mandy Patinkin, no way. And I'm 7 or 8 years old, or maybe 9 or 10. And he's just standing over us, and my mom says to him, can you do the thing? And he was like, what? And my mom was like, the thing. And he gets this spark in his eye, the smile comes out, and he looks down at me and he goes, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And I just pretty much wet myself because I was like, oh my God, he just said the line. Oh my God. Yeah. And then, so, I mean, Mandy Patinkin gets this reputation for being this, kind of jerky, mean, kind of I just don't want to have anything to do with, he tends to write projects off that he's on. But he was he gave us a hug. He was a really sweet guy. And then my wife had never been to it was her first concert. We went and saw Brandi Carlile. I don't know if you know who she is.
Sure,
yeah. And Brandi Carlile, very sweet person. She came out in the audience, and my wife was just like. And I go up to Brandi and I said, all right. And again, I had nothing to do with show business. She happened to be in a concert at a bar and before my sobriety, and in Omaha. And I said, this is my wife's first concert. And she goes, no way. And I was like, no, I'm serious. So she gives my wife a hug and she signs an autograph, and my wife is just like, she walked out like so happy. So, I mean, it really, some acts, you're really surprised by, just, because you get these reputations. People have all these, personas.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get to, sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes you get to see behind the Wizard of Oz curtain, and you see they're pretty good people. And then they're just complete dickheads,
Well, it depends on the time, First off, they are people.
Yes,
and you never know what kind of day they're having.
Exactly.
If things are going great, if you know where they are and the on the how the planets are aligning for them.
Yeah.
And it really was an interesting business. I was very fortunate in that most of the time they were coming to me, and I got to go home and go home to my house and sleep in my bed and
nice.
And that kind of stuff. They were on the road. That traveling is it's a marathon. It's and
sure.
it is an interesting. It's I like to call it the show behind the show.
Sure.
To see how it would develop.
Sure.
The folks who would first show up, because the first in is the last out, and then they. It was kind of like what I would call an Indian relay. I don't know if you ever had to do that in PE class, where they would get in a line, and then the person who's the last person in line had to run to be the very first person in line to do it.
I remember that.
Well, that's kind of like the concert business. Because the first truck in has to then hustle to be the first truck in the big concerts. I was talking when we first began here about stadium concerts. They had red, white, and blue units. That's what one of them called, and so that because it would take them 10 days to set up the stadium concert. Well, obviously they would, that unit didn't, go to the next one, so they would have 3 different units wherever they would set up. But arena concerts, a lot of times those folks would, be trucking from here to Omaha, or to someplace down the line, and so it was just interesting to see how how that worked, and I was very fortunate that I was coming in at a time when the backstage, the business side of it was modernizing. You were coming out of a time when some guy named Wolverine was handling out of a cigar box into things were becoming very technologically oriented, and a lot of these tour managers knew more about your arena than you did,
right?
And it cleaned up the arena business. The arena business was kind of very sly shenanigans business. I mean, it was the P.T. Barnum. Our industry used to be. If you watched, the old Annie Get Your Gun, listen, you guys go on stage, and I'm just going to take the office proceeds or the show proceeds and go stand over by that fast horse, and many a show has been stranded somewhere because the people who were running it were were less than scrupulous, shall we say, and so I mean it's a it's a much cleaner business now that I slandered Disney before, but I tell you, Disney has really brought a Disney ethic to what we're doing, as well as technology. I mean, there was was a time when you had to print out all the tickets to the show. Well, that's there's an expense to that now.
It's all digital.
It's all digital, and you can see what's going on, and the way that people enjoy their entertainment, and the way that they we thought, futurists thought that maybe the days of big civic centers like the one here in town, that they may be like the Colosseum in Rome, that it may just be a big architectural dinosaur. Nobody's ever going to do that. Or what are we going to, now what's it going to become? Because everybody's going to have an iPod and virtual glasses, and there's no reason to even leave your home. kind of thing. So it's and it still may come to that. I mean,
sure.
But people like social interaction too. So
sure. Well, looking back, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I know time.
No, that's all right.
You've been around for a while. I mean, obviously, clearly we've talked about that.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's an actress, and she said, really talented gal, Joanna Kay, and she said, that saying, if you love your job, you'll never work a day. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, that's complete bullshit. So, what do you think? Would you agree to that testament that it's bullshit? I
would, to a degree. Harry Chapin had a line in one of his songs, Mr. Tanner, where he said, music was his life, it was not his livelihood. Which is the way that I would put that. I love acting. And so I'm pretty much acting almost, when I was a teacher, I was an actor. When I'm, as a parent, I was an actor. When I'm, in front of the, whatever, I'm acting, the true, but my livelihood is, I gotta, I have to stand up and be polite and say, thank you, sir. Can I have another?
Right. Hopefully nobody gets spanked when they're saying, please, sir, may I have another?
Yeah, well, metaphorically, when the customer is always right, and that kind of thing. So, it's, let me take a little bit with what your friend said, which is what rankles me is that all these people says, follow your passion. Well, follow your passion in the fact that can your passion pay the light bill? No, you shouldn't be working an assembly line, twisting the nuts and bolts if that's all you're doing, if what you want to really be doing is making cupcakes. But the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Right.
I think, in this day and age, I think that there's a way to, a way to follow your passion or to, do what you want to do and you never work a day in your life, but also to realize that, I was working at the TV station when my daughter was born, and when the offer came along to make the switch over to be the marketing manager at the Performing Arts Center at a substantial raise in pay, and I realized, I says, I loved working at the TV station because that was my passion, but I said, my daughter will be 21 years old before I'm able to buy her a big wheel. So yes, now it was it took me out of my comfort zone.
Right.
And as it worked out, I was able to make a compromise where I was able to sort of keep the talk show that I liked, which stroked my ego and still do the and learn this business, the business side of show business, which which opened up doors and a future that which was completely unknown to me. So somewhere along the line, the zen of the universe was, I was smart enough. Opportunity not only banged on the door, it was rattling the windows and came around. And go away. Finally, I was able to say, oh, well, maybe I ought to take this.
Yeah.
Yes, there's, you shouldn't be trapped into something that you don't like doing. People should not be miserable. People have a right to be happy.
Right.
But they shouldn't do that at the expense of making other people miserable.
Right. They said one thing I've learned is pain is necessary, misery is optional.
Yeah. And and you shouldn't. You're not happy all the time. You got to. There's some miserable things and unhappy things you got to do. Yes.
Right. You kill anybody, Tim?
Anybody? I've not.
Okay.
I have not that I know of.
Good.
On that.
Well, last thing. Do you have any regrets?
Oh, I got tons of regrets.
Okay, well,
yeah.
All right. Well,
but you try not to dwell on those too much. And it's a little bit of the the road not taken. had I, I mean, would I not end up if I get in the time machine that I've almost got perfected? Would I not end up with another bucket full of regrets? Saying,
Right.
"Oh gosh, I'd, would have done some other."
You're happy.
I am happy. I mean, I'm pretty happy with the scars and the bumps and the bruises and the the things that.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy with the story that that I got to tell. I think I've tried to go back and apologize to most of the people who I've been able to find, that I think I have offended, but that line got so long,
Yeah.
that I could go. I would like to, circle around with that. My theory of humor on that, which had a professor who was talking about it, which he said it was playful aggression was what when we started talking about Tony and Tina's wedding, and I get that's what I'm going to try to tell the folks here on as they get looking at their developing their characters and stuff is to remember to try to be playful about it. But I think he said you have to have both sides of that. That it's okay to kind of to be aggressive, but it's playful aggression.
Yeah.
And that's but to remember to not be you need both elements on on all sides of that. But anyway, I have thoroughly
laying down.
I thoroughly have enjoyed this. I appreciate the invitation.
No, absolutely.
Here.
Thanks for coming. When are the dates?
It's Valentine's Day weekend is the best best time to do that, and I did have that written down here. It is February 14th, 15th, and 16th. I think that's
awesome.
I think that's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
All right, man.
But just remember Valentine's Day weekend on that, and it's Tony and Tina's wedding 3 this time. It's for real.
This time it's for real. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, thank you so much
for
being
thanks,
on the show.
Al. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, and man, thanks for being on. And it's been an absolute pleasure here. And take care.
All right.
And that, my friends, my fellow neurotics, is Tim Barry. Sweetest guy in the world. I'm really, really appreciative of him being on the show. He didn't even, no question about it. He was right on board with it. So thanks to him. And again, be ready for Tony and Tina's wedding, Valentine's Day weekend. And speaking of weddings, again, to my good, dear, lovely, wonderful friends, Tony and Rachel, Mazel Tov, congratulations, a blessing on both your heads. May your days be just filled with joy, and married life is is a whole different ballgame, despite what you may think. But as always, it's one day at a time.